Well, it's a joy to be talking to Steve Smith, a business owner, developer, very, very, very committed dad and husband to a beautiful wife. And he's going to tell us about his story. Tell us a bit about yourself, your occupation, family, children. What do you do?
Okay, what do I do? I hate being defined by what I do, but who I am is much more important. So I'm a father of 4 kids, ranging from 15 to 24. My daughter's the eldest. She's awesome, as are the 3 boys that come after that. My wife, Kerry, we've been married for 27 years, and we've got an interesting journey. We met many years ago. She met in 1989, backpacking around the world, met in Egypt, and didn't really do much with anything then, but later on in life we got back together, and 4 kids later, here we are. So it's part of our journey. I'm actually a tradie. I'm a sparky by trade, but I've moved through that. I still have an electrical business today, many years later, but we moved into property development and done many different things. So we've had some adventures in New Guinea doing gold mining in the late 90s. We've had all sorts of other things through that time. So it's been a journey, and we're very, very pleased to be a happy, adjusted family, not without challenges, because that's life. But yeah, so it's been very good. Just as an aside through that journey, and it's sort of part of my story, which is very important to where we've ended up, is when I was 25, 1991, I got diagnosed with leukemia, and through that process, learned a lot about life. Was given 6 weeks to live in 1991, and anyway, here we are still. Many treatments later.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Went through that. I was a bit of a stubborn bugger back in the day, so maybe that helped me, amongst other things. And had a bone marrow transplant, and a lot of sickness and challenge through that. But here we are today, and kids are miracles, as a testament to what happened there. And yeah, so we're very, very pleased to be in life, living life, and loving life. It's really good.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. Tell us about your own family growing up, your own mum and dad.
Interesting. Like, mum and dad were in their own way, caring people, I guess. They actually got divorced in 1992, during my sickness thing, which was interesting too. But they were both good people, but they never really knew how to love, I was never hugged in my whole life, never told I love you, never told I was proud of you, none of that. And Dad was a good man, but distant. So he worked hard, worked long hours, provided as a guy born in the Depression, grew up through that sort of era. That's what he knew, and that was what he knew best, and that's what he did. And so, good people. Mum was always there for you, doing whatever you needed, sort of thing, which was great. They're both passed now in the last couple of years, but so they were good people, but we really never were shown what it was meant to be a father or a mother or a son or whatever. But certainly never hurt, there was nothing bad. It was quite a existence of I've got, I guess, what was normal back then. But yeah, I mean, later on in life, I got to spend a bit of time with Dad, which was good, and we chatted through all that stuff, which was very healing and very healthy. And he wrote me a card one day that said, "Steve, you're my best friend." This was like 10 years ago, when he was in his 70s, and that really made a difference to me. So I didn't actually hear all that when I was young. So he felt it, but couldn't communicate it. So I've learned from that.
Yeah. No, it's important, and we'll talk a bit about that a bit later, why it is important to hear those words. I'm proud of you. You are special. You can do it. So tell us, the very first time you held that baby in your arms, how did you feel? How did you feel that moment? Did you cry?
I did. I was overcome, because for my journey, the doctors had told me I couldn't never have kids. So because of my treatments, the chemotherapy and the transplant and all that sort of stuff, it left me in a situation where they said that that's not going to be an option for you. So Kerry and I, when I first got together, I told her that, what the doctors said, and I know it's a long way to get to the answer at Warwick, but it's important. And we were not, and we're now Christians in our life, so we prayed about that and so forth. And so anyway, 2 years later, Zoe came along, and the doctors were quite shocked. So to answer your question, it was like overwhelming to feel that something that I was told couldn't never happen has now, the miracle was in front of me. It was overwhelming to the point of, to be honest, I can't remember if I cried or laughed or whatever, but it was just an overwhelming feel of joy and excitement, and the miracle came true, so to speak. So yes, it was quite overwhelming. Each of my children, not just Zoe, but each of them was like that. So, but certainly the first one, amazing.
Yeah, it's very. How would you just? How good. How it's almost debilitating. It's like you get rocked and you sort of don't know what to do you? Like you're holding this baby and you sort of feel a bit funny, a bit awkward. You don't quite know what to do.
So what happens next? There's a fair bit of what's next, and that still happens today. What's next? And she's 24 now.
So yeah, well, speaking about what's next, what was your single biggest challenge as a young father, holding that beautiful little baby, Zoe? I've met Zoe, by the way. She's a beautiful woman, and but back then she was a little baby. And how did you, what was your biggest challenge with Zoe?
Well, the biggest challenge wasn't, it wasn't with Zoe necessarily. She was healthy. I must admit, the moment she was born, she had some issue, jaundice and some other stuff. So they rushed her off so Kerry's in the bed, obviously, and they raced her off to somewhere to look her over. And I said, I'm coming with you. I don't care where you're taking her, I'm going, I didn't want to let her out of my sight. So that was just a small challenge in that moment. But, coming home was difficult. It was difficult. Well, it wasn't difficult. No, it was challenging because we'd never experienced this before. And Kerry was awesome. She breastfed, so she did all the late nights and she did all that. I wasn't great with the nappy changing and stuff, so Kerry did take care of all that stuff. But I think the greatest challenge for me was not necessarily with Zoe, but the situation where I now wanted to spend all my time with my family. But I had businesses I'd set up, so I had things I had to do, and so every moment away was painful. So I really felt sometimes overwhelmed with, I don't want to be at work. I want to be here with my wife and my new child, And so the challenge was really how to balance that time so that I could be with them more, And as I said, Kara was great. She did all the stuff that you have to do with little ones, but I wanted to be there, and it just was difficult. So I guess that was, think about it, was the greatest challenge, trying to juggle time where you wanted to be there, not away.
It's a sort of a Terrian sense, isn't it? Like you got to go to work to bring the dollars in and put the bacon on the table, etc., etc. But you know that, and especially when the babies are young too, your wife needs you there to support her. And number 2 comes along, number 3, you've got 4. So there's a fair bit of pressure on your wife, and she's really needing that help. And you've got to go because you had your own electrical business, so you've got employees who look into you for the wage, you've got customers, you've got bills to pay, things to do, problems to solve with electrical challenges on the house or a block of units or a factory, whatever it was you were doing. And so you're balancing that, and I think that's one of the hardest things for men. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, 100%. It wasn't just unique to our first child. It's been ongoing through my life, and I had to make some tough decisions around that. So, and when I say tough decisions, I had to, and how I dealt with that was at times I had to knock back work. If I'd committed to a time to do something with Kerry and Zoe, well, I'm just going to have to say no to that particular job. To the detriment of our finances at the time, because we'd made a decision, because of our uncertainty with actually being able to have kids. We got Kerry to stop work to take any pressure off her health before we had Zoe, so it was a one income situation. So so we believed that was the way to go, just so we had a calm environment so we could have kids. And so Kerry's always looked after the family in an awesome way. But yeah, so it was challenging. So I actually, my decision was conscious to knock back work a lot of times, and made the conscious decision early on that I could have the biggest electrical business, biggest property development business in Australia if that's what was, if I worked hard enough in my mind. But that wasn't important. What was important was time with my family, you know. So that was detrimental to our income, I guess, but it was important. And in reflection, I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't change that for the world, you know.
You made that conscious decision. I mean, my background is carpentry, construction, and I know what it is to knock back work. You've got the customers who depend on you. They want you to do the job. So it's a big thing when you say, look, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And it's very embarrassing to say, look, I'm going to take my children to
whatever,
to the Luna Park or whatever it is ever you're going to do. So you sort of best say, you don't say anything. Say, look, I'm unavailable that weekend or that this particular day. It might be first day of school. And it's quite difficult. But how did you realise this was so important? Like, that's a pretty big decision and pretty sort of wise decision to make very early on. A lot of blokes don't get that till many years down the track, and oftentimes it's too late. What was the thing that actually helped you get hold of that idea that you had to put time in with your children?
I think, you know, this might sound quite backside about, but I think one of the best things ultimately that happened to me as far as my life goes was actually getting sick. Not good at the time, obviously, but it gave me a lot of time to reflect on life and really to reflect on what was important in life. So when it came to spending time with Zoe and Kerry, that wasn't that difficult to decide, because I had realised a couple of years earlier, or several years earlier, that there's more important things to life than going out and making lots of money and having a big pile. Which I actually learned from my dad, because Dad financially did okay, but at what price? You know, never saw him. So it was a hard decision, knocking back work, obviously, but because of what I'd seen Dad's life end up like, and then looking at through my sickness, looking at life very differently. That's where I came to that decision, because I thought, well, I don't care how big the pile is, as long as I can have time in their life, particularly early on, in the formative sort of years. You know?
Yeah, it's a very wise decision. I mean, for me, I had to go through that trial by fire, for want of an expression, where I didn't go through a sickness to death, but I was 30 years of age, running a construction business, lots of people working for us, and we had 3 months of rain. We had historically very high interest rates. I think it was sort of 17-18% at the time. This is 1984, and basically I lost everything. We had a 100-acre farm, you know, big home, Volvo and Fairmont and all that sort of stuff. But it was actually a huge blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. I'm not proud of the fact that I lost everything. As a businessman, as a man likes to be successful. I wasn't successful at that point in my life. Later on, things turned around a bit in the late 80s, thank God. But the bottom line is that I had to go through that painful experience. And what it taught me a couple of things. It taught me that, number one, relationships. And I think you'd agree with that. That, like, I had a lot of people that were my friends, but when I didn't have anything, they just disappeared. And then I found out who my true friends were. And so, you know, I remember a friend of mine. So we didn't have any place to live. Like we one moment we were, you know, I remember going to the employment queue at the CES, Employment Service, Government Employment Service. They said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Well, I need I lost my job. But what's your job? Company director. Well, surely you're making money. I said, no, I'm sorry. Then I had to go through the process. So I've lost everything, and then we ended up moving into a garage, which we converted in a backyard of a home at East Corrimal, and we converted to a sort of a 1 bedroom, lounge room, kitchen, just long garage, and we lived in that with our at that stage 3 children, 3 young boys, and I was going down the beach surfing. I used to laugh at all the dole bludgers, the surfers who were on the dole. Here I was, 30 years of age, on the dole and surfing each day, but I actually needed it because I'd actually almost had a nervous breakdown, and I needed that time with my family. I needed to resuscitate. And so, you had your situation where you got very sick, 6 weeks to live. You're a walking miracle by the look of it, to me, that you're actually above ground, and the grace of God. And that sort of seared in my heart and my mind that the thing that was really important was relationships, and that I had to make sure I spent time with my family. And so, yes, at times I definitely worked too hard, but after then, we started doing things quite purposefully, more as a family. Does it make sense to you?
Definitely, exactly. I relate exactly. It makes a lot of sense, and I don't regret any second of that decision.
Yeah, look, you don't. What is the favourite thing that you do with your children? Have you got a favourite thing, or maybe multiple things, but that you do with your kids as a dad, or have done? And this could be going back, or it could be recent, it could be any time.
Intentional time is very important to me. The one-on-one time doesn't matter. We do family stuff, yeah, definitely, and I really enjoy the family dinners. That, and it's a little bit more difficult now. Our eldest son's married and not here and whatever, but the family dinners I love. I love just watching the kids talk and interact and whatever. But the one-on-one time where I take someone out for brekkie or lunch or just a coffee or whatever, I find those times fantastic, more amazing than anything, and that fills me with such happiness, to spend time with them one-on-one. And the soccer coaching I took up to really, I enjoy soccer, but they all played it, including Zoe, and being the coach for a few years for each one of them when they were young was great, Great to spend time, I thought, I'm not training anyway, I might as well be coaching. So, and still to this day I go and watch them play, and a couple of them play at a very high level now, and so I still get joy out of just watching them run around and enjoy their life. I did say early on to the kids, whatever you do, as long as you work hard at it and enjoy what you're doing, I'll back you and be there, When you don't enjoy it anymore, we need to find something different.
I think one of your sons actually went to Spain to play a sort of professionally, correct?
Yeah, so he played when he was 16, one of the big teams in Spain, and he'd just been offered a contract when the COVID thing hit, and but yeah, he was playing over there for a little while, and we went over and spent some time there, and I actually have business there now, so part of our business is in Spain as well now. So yeah, that was good. Yeah, but again, it was his journey. It was a time where he didn't want to do it anymore. But I said, that's great, no worries, we'll do something else. So I've never been one to push them. They've just got to enjoy the experience and the journey and work hard. And he's had some success, so it's great.
I forget the man who said, find a job that you really enjoy and you'll never have to work another day in your life. Correct?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I don't know who said it, but it's pretty wise.
It's very wise, and it's so important. I've really tried to encourage my kids to find things that they enjoy, and if you can make that occupation, it means you're actually enjoying what you do, and you're not working, you're actually enjoying it.
That's right.
You've spent a fair bit of time with working with Darren Lewis from Father Adventures. I think you took your children to those courses. I think you might have heard about Father Adventures through me, correct? Through Dads4Kids.
Yeah, I did. Funny, because I signed up for Dads4Kids, I think in 2009 or 10, round about then, when I wanted to learn more about how to be a better dad. I mean, I didn't. There was no book. There was nothing. So I'd read some things, but then I came across your being blessed by it ever since, So, and through that, Darren had an article, or Father Adventures had an article there I think about 2011 I took Zoe, because Zoe was 12 at the time, and Darren runs two sections of four sections ultimately, because he does sections for girls and young ladies and boys and young men. So there's four types of camp adventures he runs. And so I took Zoe on the first one. It was a 2-day, because he runs them from, say, age 7 to 13, and then from 14 upwards. So I took Zoe. It was just an amazing weekend. The practical side of educating her, being a better dad for that aged daughter, and the fact she got to interact with other young ladies, and Darren's wife, Melissa, she was awesome in teaching the girls different things. And the dads would get together for some intentional sort of training, but then we'd have time one-on-one with our daughter. And I just thought, this is amazing. Everyone needs to be doing this, because our society is, what I was observing, some of the parents I knew is not great, the way it was heading with dads and stuff. I thought, everyone needs to see this. So I started promoting it a bit, but since then, I've taken all our kids, individually obviously, on the younger ones' camp adventure, and 3 of the 4 so far on the longer 5-day adventure when they're in their teens, because there's very different challenges with a 10 to 12 year old, say, to a 15 to 18 year old, So, and he addresses all that. And so my last son, the 15-year-old, he's each year is like, Dad, when can I go on the camp? When can I go? So he's keen to go. To me, that's a testament of what his siblings have told him about the camps. And so Darren Lewis, to me, like, he's a great friend now today. Wasn't obviously when I met. A heart for people to start with, but for fathers, oh my goodness. And mothers. He engages with the mothers in the process too, because without a mother involved, the family dynamics definitely not as solid as it could be. I've said to other people that Darren's one of the best human beings I've ever met, and that's a big call. I've met lots of people and lots of walks of life, just for his heart, much like you, Warwick, and without trying to be too weird about it, you both have a heart for fathers, which is more than encouraging. It's just amazing that you take your life, you give your lives to helping other fathers better their lives. I mean, amazing. So Darren was one of those people, and I hadn't met you at that point where I'd only seen your thing. So specifically about Darren, his walk, he doesn't talk the talk, he walks the walk, to the detriment of his own finances, to, at times, probably his family, and to give and give and give. Although, having said that, his kids are well adjusted. I speak to one of his sons regularly now, his older son, who just set up an electrical business, and we talk about stuff, that he's going through. And so the way he's given to life and to the betterment of families and fathers, it's just incredible. So I have no trouble in doing whatever I can to make his mission work better, because it's so important.
Darren Lewis, I would regard him as one of the greatest men I've ever met.
Yeah.
Just like you say, and that's a big call for both you and I to say that. But if you meet Darren, and if anyone's listening to our course, just go to Fathering Adventures. Just Google Fathering Adventures. He's based in Townsville, North Queensland, and he does these adventure camps, 2 or 3 day camps for younger children, and a longer camp, 5 or 6 day camp for teenagers. He does it for both fathers and daughters, fathers and sons, and I unequivocally recommend what he does 1,000,000,000%. What he's doing is best practice. He's a world leader in rites of passage, and it's not sort of serious, macabre rites of passage. It's fun. It's actually an adventure. It's actually hanging out with your kids. It's a rites of passage as I believe it should be. It's relational. It's friendship. It's fun. It's whitewater rafting. It's going out in the reef. It's it might be trail bike riding. Whatever it is, whatever the activities that change from place to place, location to location, and they literally have the adventure of their life. Is that correct in me saying that?
Well, 100%. I haven't personally experienced anyone not come away better for the experience. I'm sure there's some in life, but I haven't experienced that. But one thing I will say, to add to what you said, is it's not just teenagers in the older course, the 5-day one. I've been on one of the camps where our kids, where one of the sons was in his late 20s and the dad was 70, but they'd never connected in their lives, and they'd use this experience to reconnect. And I watched them go from people who felt like they didn't know each other at the first day to in tears and hugging and forgiveness and whatever at the last day. Just incredible. So it's not just for the teenage years. I've seen people, Darren shared other stories with me, of people who reconnected as older sons and daughters, which is equally, if not more important than the teenagers, So it really covers all those bases, not just, younger ones. So I'd advocate, if you have never connected, reach out to your son, daughter, father, whatever, and you won't regret it, that's for sure.
It's never too late to do this, is it?
No, well, even from my own experience, when I went through my bone marrow transplant, I'd never been close to Dad at all. So when I was 26, I'd been through my transplant. It was 1 year later. I was still recovering. It took a couple of years to recover properly. And Dad offered to take me overseas, just the two of us. We went overseas. We bought a cheap car in France. We drove around France, Europe for 6 weeks together, and came home. That, in my mind, was my fathering adventure back then, because we'd never reconnected for the first, 25 years of my life. Never connected. So that's the same sort of thing. But this time with Darren, it's guided, it's intentional, and it's definitely worth doing.
He's also a trainer, because he studied rites of passage ceremonies right across the world. He's analysed them, in America. He's analysed the indigenous Aboriginal rites of passage ceremonies. He's analysed all the different tribal groups and how they do things, and the bar mitzvah, the Jewish rites of passage, which is something that I guess most people would have heard of. When a boy turns 12, 13, he gets a bar mitzvah, which is a celebration, and his father publicly says, "This is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased." And he now then, even at a young age, has the right to do transactions on behalf of his father, and he takes responsibility. And it's a time where he enters into official manhood. He's not a boy any longer; he's a man, and it's a powerful thing. So Darren teaches this over this 3 or 4 day period, informally around the campfire, and he actually helps dads.
Jump in on that, Warwick?
Yeah, go.
Can I jump in on that, because I've experienced that several times now. Obviously, the daughter, I call it a ceremony, but lack of a better word, is very different to the male one, but that's great. Each one has its fantastic place. But one of the best things I've seen is me having the chance to engage with my son one-on-one publicly in front of a dozen other fathers and sons, and call them into manhood, call them up as a man. And it's just quite an amazing experience and feeling, an opportunity which I'd never known about. The Western world doesn't teach that; it's lost. And so he is trying to teach that to as many people as he can. And so that moment of being able to call your son into manhood is just something I'll never forget. And in addition to that, he taught me how to do it. And each of my sons so far who have reached 18, I've done a personal at home where we've invited 3 or 4 close older mentors in their lives to come, and we sit in the lounge, and I got them all to write down all the good things they see in my son and speak it out to them. And then Darren also wrote a letter, because he's involved in that process heavily with my kids. And we had a meal. My wife cooked a meal for us. My younger kids served the meal, and it was intentional for that son to be at 18, outside of what Darren did for us, to come in front of the small community of mentors that we have around our sons, and raise them up into manhood personally at home. So without Darren, I would have known none of that. It wouldn't have ever occurred to me. So that was powerful. It was very powerful to be able to do that.
We teach that in a Good to Great course. We also touch upon it, not deeply in the Courageous course, but I believe it's fundamental. I didn't have a chance to do it with my kids. I did it with my daughter, and that was a big thing, a ceremony when she was turned 12, 13. But I also would recommend it highly.
Yep.
What was your biggest challenge? What's been your biggest challenge being married? How have you gone in your marriage?
How have I gone in my marriage?
Sorry to be so inquisitive.
No. It's been an interesting journey because I'd never grew up with knowing what it meant to show affection. I never hugged anyone in my whole life. Probably don't recall ever saying I love you or being told I love you in my life. So I was coming from a pretty low base of having any clue what to do. So I guess my biggest challenge was not understanding my wife's love language, not being affectionate enough, not being all the things that I needed to be, and having to really work through that process and understand Kerry's journey, and how she was, who she was. So the greatest journey, I think, once we got married was getting to know each other, which was kind of strange, but you think you get to know each other before marriage, but you do, but in some ways it's almost superficially, But when we've come through that, I realised that I had a lot of inadequacies that I needed to work on. So, and it's still an ongoing battle, not a battle, ongoing journey, I guess the battle's been fought already, so now it's just making it better, So, yeah, I guess that was my greatest challenge in not having any understanding of what it was like to be a husband, or be affectionate or whatever. So,
Tell me what you think of this, Steve. I believe women are love sponges. They need lots of love, they need lots of care, lots of encouragement, lots of nice words, just that extra bit of attention is very important to a woman who you're married to. So you would have actually been at the beginning and not brilliant husband. Am I correct in saying that? I'm not trying to run you down or anything.
No, 100%. I fully acknowledge that, yeah. It wasn't, certainly wasn't what I needed to be, that's for sure.
So how did you break through on it? How did you change? What made you realise you had to change?
I think I sort of started looking at other people we started getting around, because by that time, so we weren't Christians when we met, so by that time we started going to church and being around just a kind of different group of people, and I started seeing what good relationships look like. And I thought, that doesn't look like us, and particularly me. So I think just being around other men who were leading a life that I wanted to be leading was probably the catalyst to then look into what I do next, so I think just observing other good, solid men who acknowledge their mistakes and their stuff as well, and just being guided by what I saw with them and guided directly by them when I asked questions. I guess I was always inquisitive to how do I improve myself, even before I was married, but certainly that was the most important journey that I ever took.
How has Dads4Kids helped you be a better dad? And this could be the bleeding obvious, perhaps, because at least we introduced you to Darren and Father in Adventures, but how has Dads4Kids helped you?
Dads4Kids, as I said, when I came upon that, and I think that may have been one of the times I was seeking out how to not just be better at my relationship with Kerry, but to be a better dad, or how do I be a dad? And so Dads4Kids has directly and indirectly helped me, because it led me to Darren and I don't know, things like that. But directly, I would come home sometimes, and I don't think I ever shared this with you, Warwick. I would come home sometimes, might have been a hard day, I was down on myself, I was like, I'm just not getting this right, or whatever, just feeling low. You just feel low in life. And your weekly thing, I would read it, and you would share in your newsletter about some other guy's challenge. There's lots of issues you cover, which is great, but it was amazing how many times that the issue you covered was something I was dealing with then. And so I'd read their story and read into the story, and then through your newsletter you'd have a funny section where it was a bit of a laugh, and so it actually released a lot of tension. So directly, just reading the newsletter has helped me to be uplifted in that moment, and then of course teach me different things, and some of the things I follow through. You might sometimes have 10 steps to a better marriage, or 10 steps to a better whatever, and so I read them and I print them out and I utilise it. So been a lot of direct benefits like that too.
There's a lot of stuff in that newsletter, and some people complain about it being too long, and probably is too long, and we are, trying to sort of...
It's a smorgasbord, mate. Smorgasbord.
Yeah, look, it's a smorgasbord. I keep saying that to blokes, and I've had, a lot of them blokes say, it's too much stuff there, Warwick. You've got all this stuff about marriage and single dads and granddads and all this sort of stuff. Well, I say to them, look, just look at something, even just look at the thought, just for 30 seconds, and look at that thought, and read the dad jokes, because at least they're funny, and at least you'll go away with a smile on your face. A happy dad is better than a sad dad. So, it's going to be a net positive if you read the newsletter, even if it's 30 seconds or 60 seconds, my goodness me. But, if you're going to put, we talked about that you've been through your baptism of fire with your sickness, you almost died, 6 weeks to live, you're a walking miracle today, with leukemia back, was it the early 90s, was it? 91. In 84, I lost everything, and it taught me a lesson, and the lesson you learnt is the same lesson I learnt, that relationships are the most important thing. That's the one thing you can't skimp on. And, you might be the wealthiest guy and have the biggest car and the biggest house in town, but if you've got a good relationship with your wife and a good relationship with your kids, you are a wealthy man, correct?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. Much more important than the car and the house, yeah.
Yeah. And so, look, we're not against you having a car if you're listening to us today. Steve and I are not saying you shouldn't have a nice car, you shouldn't have a nice home, you shouldn't have some nice things. What we're saying to you is that put a priority on the things that matter, and be like Stephen, and he's really sought out people like Father in Ventures, and he's taken his kids to all those things, and it's changed his life. His kids are better for it. They're doing really well. I've met at least 2 of his kids, and they're absolutely fantastic. And, he's proved this. If you put time into your family, you invest in your family, things are going to go better for you. Why should people, and you support Dads4Kids in a wonderful way, and we are very humbled by your support, by the way. Why should people listening to this call today, support Dads4Kids? And I've got to keep reminding everybody, we are a charity. We're not a business. We are a charity, number one, for those listening to us today. And we need your help to do this sort of thing, to do the podcast, to do the weekly newsletter, to do the summit, to do the courageous courses, to do all this sort of stuff. So we need your help. But I'm asking Steve, as someone who's been gracious and kind, like you wouldn't believe, to Dads4Kids, why should dads invest in Dads4Kids?
Well, it might sound a bit cliche, but I actually believe if you do press into what the information is and what the heart behind it, it does help change your life. So that's, it might be cliche, but that's what I really felt that has assisted me in becoming better in all those areas, fathering and a husband and so on. But as far as actually giving into it physically or financially, I was a bit haphazard. I'm a generous person, I like to give, but I was very haphazard and would just, if I remembered, I'd chuck in a little bit of money or whatever. And through that process, I had the opportunity, and I'm talking to you, but through you, Warwick, right now, to meet you, and I had no idea of the amount of stuff you had done and do for people. I had no clue, and coming to read some of the stuff you've written, and I realised how much of your life you give at the detriment of your own finances and time to other people. And I thought, I can't be haphazard about this anymore. If I'm genuinely want to help our country and the fathers and the families, I can't be haphazard about that decision anymore. So I made the decision to make a regular commitment, financial commitment to your organisation, because it's not something you can be haphazard about. If you feel that it's important, it needs to be regular, and the amount's irrelevant. It's relative to what can happen. But I decided to commit because I wanted to help make a change in some way. I can't do what you do, can't do what Darren does, but I can do what I do, and so I would advocate everyone to be intentional about their giving, whether it's to you or whoever, wherever they feel that there's going to be change and need to be met, to be part of that intentionally.
Yeah. And look, we're very thankful for that. And by the way, just for those listening, we also, Dads4Kids, support financially fathering ventures, and we provide scholarships for those dads who haven't got the money to pay the full amount for a 5-day adventure. We're doing half scholarships for those dads, and so supporting us supports Dads4Kids, and supporting Dads4Kids supports the wonderful work of Darren and Fathering Ventures. And we've just got to get in there and make things happen, haven't we, Steve? You're a practical man, I know that.
Yeah, definitely.
As we draw towards the end of this in conversation, we're looking for some wisdom from you. Can you give us any wisdom about how to love a woman? Now, we talked about it earlier, this issue of communication, and my goodness me, it's a big job, and I'm still learning how to do this. I'm still making mistakes. 67 years of age, I'm still making mistakes, Steve. So I need your help. What advice can you give me to make me a better husband?
Well, there's a couple of things I think, and I haven't been very good at this all through my life, but I'm improving every day, and I'm trying to do that. Firstly, it's pretty obvious, but be a good listener, because wives like to share a lot, and in my past I would just shut it down, and just not be interested. But being a good listener is very, very critical, because your wife needs to know that she's heard, so that's really important. But more important than that, even the main thing is to be trustworthy. Your wife needs to know she can rely on you and trust you 100%. So I have a saying that, or not my saying, but your word is your worth. So if you say it, you make it happen. So your wife needs to know that what you say, you're going to follow through with, and she knows she can trust you no matter what. To me, that's the main two things.
So I've got 2 tips from you. Number 1, we've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. We've got to use that ratio. We've got to listen more to our wives. And what I try to do is I look at her. If I'm looking down at my work or doing something, I'll actually turn my head around. Honey, I'm listening to you. Talk to me. But even now, I still fail.
Get rid of these things, Warwick. Get rid of them. Chuck them on the floor when you're talking.
What you got to do, if this is advice from Stephen, throw this away. Well, don't run over it. Don't destroy it, but hide it. Switch it off. Put it in the corner and talk to your wife and give her your full attention. Correct, Steve?
That's right.
And then the second one is?
Be trustworthy. Be someone she knows 100% what you say she can believe.
Now, I'm only just learning this pretty lately, that I say to my wife, I'll be back at 9 o'clock to pick you up to go to the office. And I used to be, 20 years ago, it'd be 15, quarter past, I wouldn't ring her, I wouldn't tell her if I was late, I'd just turn up and she'd say, where have you been? But now, I always try to get there at 9. If I say 9 o'clock, I try to make sure it's 9 o'clock. And if I'm not going to be there at 9, say I'm going to be there 3 minutes past or even 5 minutes, I ring on the phone and say, honey, I'm sorry, I'm running late. I'm going to get there as soon as I can. I'll be 5 minutes late. Does that make sense, Steve?
Absolutely. That's just respect as well. That's being trustworthy and being honourable, but it's respect for someone's time. It's 100%. That's what you've got to do.
3 tips as we finish today. What are your 3 tips to be a dad?
Is intentional time. They need to know that you're taking your time to be with them on top of anybody else. So to me, that's really important, that intentional one-on-one time. And so it doesn't have to be a lot, just be intentional. the second one, and these are in no particular order, is live the example that you want them to follow. So no good saying to them all this great wisdom and stuff if you're living completely different to what you're saying. So you need to live the example, whether it's you want generosity, be generous. You want them to be honest? Be honest. You want them to live with integrity? You live with integrity. So they need to see and observe you being what you want them to be, you know? Very important. And then let them know they're loved. All of our 4 kids have different ways of accepting and love languages. So find out what that is, and then let them know they're loved all the time. Give them a hug. Tell them I love you. Doesn't matter what age, 2 or 22 or 32 or whatever. So they're the 3 things: be intentional in time, live the example you want them to be, and let them know they're loved. That's my 3 tips for it.
So number 1 was
Intentional time.
Intentional time. Number 2 is
Live the example to be the example you want them to be.
be the change that you seek from them. And number 3 is
let them know they're loved.
Let them know they're loved. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you, Steve, and thank you for your wisdom. Thanks for your advice. Thanks for your insight. Hopefully your words will encourage other dads. Huge thank you.
Thank you, Warwick, for the opportunity. I appreciate it.